Dear friends, do you have a deep love for the earth and want to learn how to bring the energy of mindfulness to your climate response? Well, we've put together an online course called Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. It is a 7-week online learning journey where we will learn how to nurture insight, compassion, community, and mindful action in service of the earth. The course harnesses the wisdom of our teacher Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh and includes new Dharma talks and practices, community sharing groups, and live interactive events with monastic teachers. I'm looking forward to teaching at these live events together with Sister True Dedication, as well as many other monastic Dharma teacher and lay teachers. We begin on the 20th October 2024 and learn together for 7 weeks until our closing event on the 8th of December. And following the course, you'll still be able to access all the talks and practices for 1 whole year. Join us by heading to the website today, plumvillage.org/zasp. That's ZASP. Hope to see you there.
Dear friends, welcome to this latest episode in the podcast series, The Way Out is In. I'm Jo Confino, working at the intersection of personal transformation and systems evolution.
And I'm Brother Phap Huu, a Zen Buddhist monk, student of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh in the Plum Village community.
Now, brother, today we're going to talk about being and doing. And the reason is that society, or mainstream society, seems to value or believe that action equates to what we do, and that how we are and the way we are in the world tends to be relegated to a very, very poor second place. So today we're going to look at actually how do we allow and create the conditions where our way of being is truly valued.
The way out is in.
Hello, dear listeners. I am Jo Confino.
And I'm Brother Phap Huu.
So, brother, as I was walking up what Thich Nhat Hanh referred to as the legendary path from the small Shonha monastery up for this recording, what was coming into my mind was that a lot of the conversations I have with people I'm coaching is around that while they may personally have understood the benefits of being present, of reflection, of slowing down, of being truly present to what is, that they're often working in environments that value only, we've got a job, we've got to get it done, we've got to act fast, it's an emergency, let's get going. And that can, of course, happen not just in organizations, but in families and other places where we socialize. So what I want to explore today, and with your guidance, is to really help people who understand this, to start talking with people who don't really recognize it. Because often people, for instance, come to Plum Village and they have a deep experience of the practice and they go back to their families, organizations, and they want to imbue that, they want to bring that in. But often speaking about it is quite hard because we have to experience it. But nonetheless, people do need to find a way of saying, how can we encourage other people to start to see the benefits of this practice, even if they haven't sort of experienced it? So I want to start by sort of really just putting some context in, is being and doing. What's the difference between those two?
Being is being alive, being present, and doing is actually a part of being in the spiritual world, in the way we look at action. But I think in the worldly manners and the worldly view, doing is thought of as production and a means to achieve something. And I think in the worldly manner, doing also carries the idea of ego and self. In terms of being, in the deep view of Buddhism, being can only be when you interbe with everything else. And so, first of all, to really come back to your first question of explaining it, we we would say in the Zen language, don't try to explain it, be it first. And this is very important and is so crucial because words sometimes are misleading, and words and energy, when it is there to persuade others, it carries the energy of doing. But being, it shows and it expresses the insight of being present. And so we have to understand, in terms of spirituality and in terms of the teachings of the Buddha, and the essence of our practice is to develop more and more our quality of being present. And being present is a ground of all actions. A lot of the time we are doing, it is not with the foundation of right intentions in our doing. So when we practice meditation and we study the teachings of the Buddha and we put it really into practice, it all comes down to becoming more and more present and alive for whatever that is present for us. And being is kind of like mindfulness of something. It's like being of something, being in the body, being in the present moment, being in the work. We can be in the work and be so present and having the insight of non-self in it. So we have to first break it down. So when we look at human beings, already the idea human beings is a separation already. And this speaks upon the self. Like as a human, we tend to have the idea that we're at the top of the pyramid, and therefore we cultivate a lot of views that is very destructive because we think we have a lot of power and we have the right to extract, we have the right to take, we have the right to control. But to be is to interbe. And what does interbeing means? Interbeing means we cannot be alone on this planet. When we come home to the present moment and we really start to feel our body, we start to look within even our consciousness, it is not ours alone. And to truly be alive and to truly be here, be you, you have to interbe with everything that is. And therefore, in Buddhism, we also call this the insight of no self. But no self doesn't mean you are not here. You have a self in order to understand no self. And even in the trees, we may think that the tree has its own self, but the tree is also you. There is already a very deep connection, an interrelationship between you and the tree without even knowing. And so is the tree a human being? It's not a human being, but it is a being. And in the tree, you are also present. So we have to start to almost like digest this. And I wanna turn towards my teacher because he spoke on lazy day, and he spoke on doing nothing. And I think in some ways this is to help us be free from the chain of habit that have been passed down from generation to generation with this mentality and this energy of don't just sit there, do something. And he has a reflection back, and is don't just do something, sit there. And I just want to read this, and then we can digest it even more.
Great.
The lazy days that we practice in Plum Village is a kind of drastic measure against the kind of habit energy. On lazy days, you refrain. You do your best in order to refrain from trying to do something. You try to do nothing. It's hard. It's hard, but we have to learn. We have to learn to open up, to start a new civilization. Because we have the tendency to think in terms of doing and not in terms of being. We think that when we are not doing anything, we are wasting our time. That is not true. Our time is, first of all, is for us to be. To be what? To be alive. To be peace, to be joy, to be loving. And that is what the world needs the most. So we train ourselves in order to be. And if you know the art of being peace, being silent, then you have the ground for every action. Because the ground for action is to be. And the quality of being determines the quality of doing. Action must be based on non-action.
Wow. He really knows how to get to the heart of the matter. And brother, one of the words he used was training. And so I want to ask you about that because, some of the people I speak to, as I said, they recognize the importance, but they're working in or they're living in an environment that doesn't value that at all. And that can sometimes feel quite draining because people are almost trying to help other people to see. And as you said, convincing people of this is very difficult if you haven't tasted it. So how can individuals who maybe want to be more present, how can we start to train ourselves so that despite the circumstances we're in, that we can maintain that level of presence?
It's very simple. Create a schedule for yourself. Create a schedule of practice in being. And it is very simple, and at the same time, it is very difficult. Because in our 21st century, in our collective idea of life, we think it has to be overwhelmed with a lot of actions, a lot of noise, a lot of tasks to do, and therefore we have the concept multitasking. And actually, multitasking is just doing everything at once without focus and without concentration. And yes, sometimes we may be able to do a few things multitasking, such as you may be listening to this podcast and cleaning your home. And in a way, if you're fully focused in cleaning your home, you may be so mindful in sweeping the grounds or cleaning the dishes. And if you're very mindful in the cleaning the dishes, then you can be mindful of the water that is coming through the faucet, and what a miracle that is. And then the feelings of the water on your hands, and then the podcast just becomes white noise. And maybe the voice are coming through, and maybe nothing is also lost because it enters your store consciousness. It enters your consciousness of being. But when we start training in the monastery, we are really instructed to learn to do one thing at a time. And funny enough, our teacher's name is One Action. But look at his life and look at how much he has accomplished. And to think that doing one thing at a time will not have enough time is already, dare I say, a wrong view. And of course, there is crisis, there are things, there are actions that we need to do. But what grounds of actions, what grounds of energy are we infusing into our way of thinking, into our way of doing, and then understanding the impact of energies that follow along with action. So here, when I say really set up a schedule, that's what we do in the monastery. And it's creating this kind of discipline and creating this new habits for us and new habits for our mind, new habits for our bodily actions, that it can tune into mindfulness whenever we need to. It can tune into deep presence whenever we need to. So for example, every time we wake up, how do we wake up? It's a choice. We may wake up, start scrolling on our phones, or we may wake up and just open our eyes and realize that we have 24 brand new hours ahead of us. Sitting up on the bed, putting our feet down on the ground, standing up, knowing that we're going to take a first step. How will that first step be? Will that first step be with an energy of hurry or a fear of today or the step of being alive? These are all choices that we can ground ourselves with our insights of the present moment and the insight of impermanence, the insight of life is a miracle. And we train this from the moment we wake up to the moment we are making a cup of tea. When we're drinking that cup of tea, how are you drinking that cup of tea? So I'm starting to like really break down to you how I wake up. And how did I get here after 22 years? First, I got to start with the first very simple actions that I can maintain on a daily basis. Maybe I'm not going to be successful in waking up and having peaceful and compassionate thoughts, but I train myself every morning, waking up, I smile, period. And I just do that, even though it may become autopilot, but then that smile becomes a bell of mindfulness, reminding me that, today is a brand new day. And then in living in community, we have a schedule set up by the brothers and the sisters, and the schedule is really our teacher. It is like the spine of our body. It is the pathway to well-being. And even on days when we don't want to go sitting, you go. So it becomes a discipline. It becomes a way to get yourself out of your own thought of what you need. Because sometimes what you need is your own delusion of what you think you need. And our teacher always says, on days that you think you don't need to sit, you go sit. And on days you feel like low energy, when you sit, you can actually tap into the collective energy of everyone and you feel more present and more alive. So really, like fundamentally, really choosing a few actions a day that you really devote that action as a holy action, as a spiritual action, as a zone of mindfulness for you. And our teacher really encourages household that has the conditions. You know, we have bedrooms, living room, entertainment room, and Thai really encouraged to have a breathing room or a room where we can cultivate spirituality. And we don't have to make it like a temple. You know, we can have a flower, and every day we just check, is that flower still fresh? Do we need to tend to it, or do we need to upgrade it? And so the space becomes a space that reminds us to help cultivate our energy of being. So mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, the first establishment of mindfulness, which is on the body, is the ground of being.
Thank you, brother. And it's interesting because I was having a conversation with someone this morning about this topic, actually. And I said, well, they said, well, I'm very good at organizing things for work, but I don't want to bring my sort of work organization to the rest of my life. And I said, well, it's not actually your organization for work. It's the way your mind can cultivate change. So the fact is that you've used that idea of planning or scheduling for work to get things done, but you've never used it in the rest of your life. And actually, rather than seeing it as I don't want to transfer my work schedule to the rest of my life, is just to say, actually, what helps me to be effective? What helps me to develop a practice? What helps me to get things, in a sense, what you get done in your work life? What helps to create the conditions for you to improve in your other life? So I think that is very helpful to people. So Tai, or as Thich Nhat Hanh was known, he talks about that being is the ground of our action. Let's talk about that. What does that actually mean? So let's maybe look at the opposite of that, which is if we just do stuff and we don't actually, we're not in our being, what is the risk if we just say, oh, right, I'm just doing stuff. I've got a list of things to do. I'm just going to do stuff. I'm going to have a strategy. I'm going to do it. What's the risk if we don't actually bring the being into that?
The risk of that is we get lost in doing nothing. Essentially, or we get lost in the idea of achieving something without really being there, even for the achievement. And we've met so many folks come to Plum Village that are doers, wonderful doers, doing amazing bodhisattva works, from activists to educators to compassionate leaders. And when they come to Plum Village, they have 7 days to really start slowing down and to really start reflecting on their presence for their loved ones. Our life is very limited. 80 years, 70 years, 100 years, maybe if we're lucky, 120 years. That's very short in the span of the earth, in the span of the ultimate dimension. And a lot of people's awakening when they come to a retreat is they realize that everything that they've done is for others. Even in the idea is for the goodness of others. But they still feel so empty, so lost, because the dualistic mind that we have, this idea of everything is separated. I cannot be happy until I accomplish that. And then when I arrive at that accomplishment, I've lost all of the time in between. And I didn't see that the time in between, what we call the process, was an important moment to also be present for. And how many people have left Plum Village and left the retreat, realizing that when they go home, they're going to hug their child with their full presence, with their full being, and see the child as a child, not see him as a child in 10 years from now. I need to invest this for him because then he will be like that, da 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 da, and then our mind carries us away into the future. And so this mindset of doing and being have been divided. And the difference in our training is we don't separate between the spirituality and the doing. And I think this is, once again, it's a dualistic mindset. How many times have I heard as a facilitator, as a teacher, as a mentor, I can't do this, brother, in the real world because work and spirituality are different. And I said, that's just your view. Are you breathing while you're working? Are you present while you are working? Where is your heart space when you're connecting with your colleagues, with the people that you are interacting with? Are you able to offer kindness to the ones that are tending the gardens that you see every day before you enter your office. But our world, we are so divided in stages, in hierarchy, in status, and it's become a huge competition. And so therefore, we even think that being and doing are two separate things. And so here, the Zen master teaches us that the foundation of doing, it comes really from the base of our true presence, that what we really remember. And we have to understand in the understanding of Buddhism, our actions are our truest karma that we leave behind in this world. They are our true continuation of our actions, of our thoughts, our actions of our speech, and our actions of our bodily actions, our today action, how I open the door, how I see you, how I speak to you, how I engage in difficult conversations. And so, I just want to bring it to a very fundamental, just realistic. Plum Village now, we just finished week 2. Today is departure day.
Of the family summer retreat.
Yes, and we had 800 people here. And do you think spirituality and doing are not being bridged in Plum Village? We are cooking for 400 people, 400 in our hamlet. We are planning the bus rides, the transportations. We're planning how the service is going to happen, how the dishes are going to be cleaned for 400 people. The children programs are being put into actions. What is the next program tomorrow? And so doing is always present, but it's how we are doing it. How are we giving space for each action and that we're not being distracted? And I think like today we have to train ourselves even more intensively than maybe 20 years ago when the phone wasn't the computer it is today. And it's like it's a supercomputer, but we allow it to have it in our pocket. And the supercomputer is also a super distractive being that sucks our being into it. So we have to truly, really train ourselves to be concentrated and disconnected from distraction. And I think of it like this. When we read Wikipedia, we want to read about podcasts. And then it teaches us how to do podcasts or, the idea of a podcast. And then you see a sentence with blue letters and you get interested and then you click in it and it leads you to another page. And then you read the next page and then you see another link and you click on it and then you go down this rabbit hole. And after 3 hours of down this rabbit hole, you've totally lost focus of your true purpose. And so being, it grounds us to the intention of what we set and the groundedness in our concentration of actions. And I return back to this insight that, wow, the Buddha that taught us this teaching 2,600 years ago is still so on point. The 3 trainings in Buddhism is mindfulness, concentration, and insight. And the second one is concentration, because we can be aware of something, but we may lose our concentration really quickly. We may lose our mindfulness very quickly. So to have the focus on just one action, to have our whole being in that one action, these are the actions that have deep impact. And it can be so simple, but it has deep and long-lasting impact.
Thank you, brother. I want to talk a bit about doing as being an avoidance of being. And I was having a conversation yesterday with someone, an activist, and when we were exploring their doing, there were two things that came up. One was that their doing to try and help people and save the world was because of their fear of abandonment. And on the other side, their sort of doing was because when they help other people, it justifies who they are and they feel good about themselves. So those are very natural sort of needs, not to feel part of something, to feel important. But what I've noticed so much is that people do in order to avoid their feelings, in order to avoid just being present, because actually a lot of people are scared of stopping, of just being. And I just wondered, what do you think it is about people that are fixated with doing and are fearful of being? What is it about being that scares us?
I think being can be very confronting because when we're truly there, we start to see ourselves more clearer. And in the silence of being, like Tai shared, we have to be able to cultivate a stillness and a silence in our being. Just think of a lake. When the lake is very calm, the lake reflects everything. It reflects everything as it is. And part of being is to embrace everything that is a part of you, from the beauty, the talent, the aspiration, to the ugly, the desire, the craving, the complexes that we have, the idea that I actually have these really dark thoughts. And I think when we start to be and we start to see all this, we have the tendency to avoid pain and suffering. And that is one of the characteristics of our manas. In terms of manas in Buddhism, it is part of the mind consciousness, and manas has the tendency to be, but to be recognized, to be praised, to be acknowledged, to be loved. But manas also has the fear of suffering, and so therefore it craves sensual pleasure. It craves instant happiness, instant gratification. And I think doing gives us this. For example, like, like lazy day, like sometimes I do wake up and I'm like, wow, I got so many hours ahead of me. I don't know what to do. And then I get carried away by that thought alone. And instead of just enjoying doing nothing, and then, I set intentions, and then I'd go and I clean my room and I feel really good about it. And then after that, I'm like, what now? And so this habit of like, okay, next, that article that you were supposed to write 5 years ago, maybe it's time. And then you get carried away and then you start to write it and then you feel you're not good enough. Then you drop it and then you lose yourself again. And then I'm just telling you what I went through like a few days ago. And then you come back to the present moment and then you realize, actually, how about the 400 people that are here? Why don't I go be with one person and really just be there for that person, like you're being there for yourself? And so I think the confrontation of being is, well, being takes energy, but it also gives energy. And being also, it forces us to surrender to the present moment, to surrender to yourself, to surrender to the person. And I just had an amazing week of practice with 20 people in a sharing group. And some of them, the first 3 days, it was so difficult because being in Plum Village was so confronted even with nature, with the bugs, even though, we preach, oh, nature is life. I'm part of the ecosystem. And here you are in Plum Village, you see a little spider and you freak out. And I get it. I'm sorry. That sounds very criticizing. I apologize. Or, grass is on you and you freak out, and some of Gen Z's like, quotes and jokes is like, go touch grass. Like, you have way too much time. Like, go touch grass. So I actually wrote a calligraphy, go touch grass, as a good reminder. And then you don't have all this distraction and these amazing folks like really put into practice not carrying their phones with them, only using it in the room, because then it's very intentional why I'm using it. But I don't want to be carrying this machine while I'm in Plum Village. Then it carries me away from being in Plum Village. And so therefore being like you start to almost like see the world for what it is, but you haven't seen it for what it is. And so therefore it's confronting. And so many folks were living in their minds, in their views of what Plum Village is. So when they came and, there was a little bit chaos with 100 children running around the monastery, especially at meal time, it's like, it is loud, like no matter how many bells we invite and everybody stopped for the sound of the bell and everybody comes back to their breathing, but then they go again. And, some of them were so even frustrated. And I loved it because they were able to share it. But then they had the biggest breakthrough from being in community like this. And one just had a breakthrough when he saw 2 children sitting on a swing. And every time the swing would go up, the kids would go, yay! Yay! And he just realized this is what life is about. And this is why I am doing what I'm doing, to protect this innocence, to be reminded of the curiosity and the amazement of an innocent child, of just going up and down, feeling the breeze of the wind as the swing is going up and down, and seeing the mother happy as she is swinging her daughters, and just the simplicity. And at first, he was so against that the kids are here. And that moment when he touched that miracle, he also touched his inner child. And then he was able to fully be and be free from ideas of Zen, idea of meditation, idea of a retreat. So I think being is also the key to deconstructing our views that we have accumulated and viewpoints that we hold on to what we think is right and wrong.
Beautifully spoken, brother. And it sort of speaks to what you were saying at the beginning, which is that we can't convince people of the importance of being because you have to taste it. And also one thing I want to come back to is our ability to be vulnerable. Because, as you say, a lot of the time the doing is an avoidance of being because we fear the dark side. I've learned for myself that actually allowing and sharing my vulnerabilities is actually a super strength. And the reason is because if I'm able to share it without fear or favor, I'm actually more present for myself. I'm able to share who I am. I have sometimes people when I'm coaching say, "Oh God, you're very wise," or this, and I said, I'm just as screwed up as everyone else. I said, if you want to think how wise I'm, go and ask my wife Paz, and she'll put you straight right away. And there's something so relaxing about being complex and allowing it all in. And there's this wish to be perfect, this wish to show up in the best way, actually is so energy sucking. I mean, what we're having to do is be somebody else. And actually to be ourselves is like we think there's something wrong with us. And when we're able to open up and say, this is who I am, these are my wounds, these are my scars, this is who I am, what we're doing is releasing ourselves and actually releasing other people.
And these are my potentials. And I think that is one of the keys that that help unlock my complexes in me. In the teachings of Buddhism, we embrace the mud and the lotus, and we see all the potentials that are in us. And that beauty of seeing the potential in us gives us this understanding of growth and us being like an organic plant. That there are seasons, that moments, maybe it's the autumn and we are a little bit more introverted because we're starting to get cold and we need to go inwards a little bit more. And then the spring and the summer, when we're more alive, we're more vibrant, we have a lot of energy and we need to be more outdoor. And to just coming back to, in the process of being, we are not just one moment, but we are a stream of moments. And it speaks on all the potentials that we have. And knowing that even if our potential is not reached in this lifetime, it is not lost because we have transmitted the potentials to the next generation. And I think when we look at doing and being in this light, we can free ourselves from the historical view that we need to accomplish everything to save the world in this moment, in this lifetime. Because the truth is, after we are not here, the next generation would take on that torch and carry it forward. And the language I love in Zen is transmission. What are we transmitting in our lifetime so that the next generation can continue on with the torch of wisdom and actions, so that we are building a culture of love, a culture of understanding, a culture of protection, a culture of interbeing and non-discrimination. And unfortunately, these views are not that sexy and maybe it doesn't bring in a lot of money. And so for whatever reason, it hasn't become mainstream. And the views of being successful, being number one, being the saviors, is very based on individuals. And we can see a lot of this mindset is also part of colonialism, and systems. And now, to change the system, we have to change our way of being. And by changing our way of thinking, changing our way of interacting, and changing our way of being, particularly on the discrimination side.
And it's interesting about the way we use language, because you were just saying being number one, whereas actually it's doing number one. It's not actually being number one. We're doing number one. Brother, one thing I see in people is a fear that if they go more into being, that they'll stop doing anything. It's like people are, like on a treadmill. They've got so many things, they have to do. And some people, of course, it's not just work. It's children, it's a partner, it's the house, it's the mortgage, it's the taxes, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And they feel that if they take their foot off the gas, then the fear is everything will collapse. Because actually, if they let go, then actually they won't want to do any of it. They'll just want to sort of, in a sense, disappear. So I just think it's really important to talk about that, because in my understanding, and what you've been describing, the being supports the doing. But how do we help people to work with the worry that actually they'll just become lazy, not have lazy days, they'll become indolent, they'll just stop doing anything, they'll just almost quit, and that they have to keep going because of this fear that everything will collapse if they stop?
I think it's a really important question. And the first thing that comes up is we have such a wrong view and a wrong idea about being. We think to be is to sit there and be silent. And we think that to be, in terms of Zen, is in the state of meditation, which is, when I say the word meditation, I am sure everybody in their mind is somebody sitting cross-legged, back upright, maybe going right. So it's a view that we have cultivated and curated. But once again, don't break things down into boxes. When we have volunteers come here to help us, and they're thinking, they're going to be cutting carrots very slowly, one breath per one chop, we would get so pissed. The monastic were like, guys, we have 400 people that we got to cook for. Please chop, please cut, please start peeling away. And this idea that mindfulness and spirituality is woo-woo, it's like lovey-dovey, just breathe in and you're full because you're full of gratitude. It's so, sometimes it makes me cringe, and it makes me like, very even like hurt, because like that's such a wrong view. Here we are like waking up, sometimes the brothers, it's not on our schedule to serve, but the soccer net was destroyed this morning, after 2 weeks, and we got to put it together because we know that tomorrow we have a new group of people, and that is happiness. So the practice is that our action is not ours alone. I think where we can start to blend in the spiritual insight is our actions are not ours alone. And our completions of tasks is not only for our benefits. And I like, honestly, like some days, like in a retreat, I'm so overwhelmed. I have like meetings in the morning, Dhamma talk. I show up for chanting. I leave the Dhamma talk. I go and I, prepare for the next meeting. And then I have to see people because like, how many people have saved up their time to come here? And I want to be there for them. But I know I have limited energy. And then I have a schedule, 4:00, being with the family for Dhamma sharing. And as a facilitator, it takes really a lot of my energy. And if I am to look at just doing for the sake of just doing, I won't have energy. But when I think of it in terms of the interbeing aspect of this, the transformation of deep listening and loving speech, and of vulnerability, because Dhamma sharing is a space that we curate together, that we create this safety and this bond among practitioners, that we're able to share something maybe of our deepest suffering that we've never spoke to, even to ourselves, about. And when I see it in the light of deep transformation and in the light of interbeing, it's not even about me. I literally go there, invite 3 sound of the bell. I help everybody arrive, and I just open the door for the heart space to be open. And that's all I do. And I just listen. And in the end, I always feel more energized than when I came in. And I feel more alive. And then I see my life has a purpose. My practice has a purpose. My doing has impact, because it is interbeing into every aspect of everyone that is present. even the bamboos are swaying becomes a part of our Dhamma talks, become a part of our Dhamma sharing. And the presence of action is also, we cannot see it. We have this amazing child. Her name is River. She was in our Dhamma sharing. And her parents gave her the name River from their many years of coming to Plum Village, because going as a river is the second Dhamma seal of Plum Village. So they gave her the name River. And she stayed with us for every Dhamma sharing.
How old was she?
She's 3 years old. She came with us for every meal. And she is so peaceful. She's so attentive. And there are moments she's just being embraced by her mother and then her father, but always there. And knowing how to be in silence, it's amazing. And I just have to give credit to her parents, because I really feel that their practice of many years have just been sown into her without her being in Plum Village. And so this child being in the group, she's listening to all of us. She's seeing men being vulnerable, opening their hearts, sharing from their space of transformation. All of this, she is soaking it in. She is seeing action. And we don't know, but I trust that all of this experience will give her a wonderful experience of being in a community where it is safe, where she is witnessing love, kindness, even space for uncomfort feelings, for confrontation with suffering, but how it is being shared and how it is being held as a group. And so in the being and in the doing, in terms of the looking of Zen, that already is action. And we don't know this impact, but the impact is there. And so for me, when I tap into interbeing, I receive a great source of energy. And this foundation, it comes really from love. Because when I love the transformation that I have been able to experience, then that love, I only want to share it with others. When I love this nature, this ecosystem, this environment, then I will do everything in my capacity to care for it so that the next generation can also be in this space of love, in this space of this environment, and so on and so on. And so therefore, like, even with this nonstop doing that we are a part of, that we're doing, there is still being in it, because you're reminded of why you are doing it. And then that offers you so much energy. And then on the practical level of an individual practitioner, coming home to myself, that my well-being, as in health, is the well-being of everyone. And we really practice, when the brothers go play soccer with the teenagers and the young adults at Sigulays, at the soccer field, I always say, brothers, enjoy the game, but don't get hurt. Because your well-being is our well-being. If you get hurt, we worry. If you get injured, especially in the summer retreat where all hands on deck, that means it's another brother, another sister going to have to be doing something that you were responsible for. So then in the real being, there's a lot of responsibility. So as a mother, as a father, as a parent, your meditation and your being is with the child. You see you in the child. The moments that you can be still and sit, you enjoy that. And the moments you can't, you don't think that is not meditation. Because your presence with the child, the way you love the child, the way you're present for the child, that is your transmission. This distinction that we always create in ourselves of resting, of meditating, of being, they're all concepts and views that we've created. But in our reality, yes, there are moments we can truly enjoy that. And then there are moments when you gotta act. You gotta show up. You haven't had your 5 o'clock meditation? I don't care. Go to help cook breakfast, please. That's your responsibility. And we start to break down also this this idea of like selfishness even in practice. It's like, oh, like I've had a brother where it's like, oh, I haven't had my cup of tea yet, brother. And I won't be fully there if I don't have my cup of tea. I'm like, and how about that 2 hours before this this session that we were supposed to be present for? Why weren't you there for that moment? Right? So it's like I've I've also I acknowledge this fear, and I understand when people get scared of spirituality and get scared of these ideas of like gratitude and of foundations of like blissfulness. It's very misleading sometimes, and the real art is being blissful and being present through every storm that arises.
Thank you, brother. And it reminds me that sort of being is holding space, actually. It doesn't look as though it has a physical manifestation, but actually it creates space for others also to be. So this comes back to my original question. How do you convince people, other people? Well, and it comes back to what you said at the beginning. If we are fully present or more present, then actually that is a state of being that people will listen to and open up to. And it reminds me of when I was a young man and I was working in New York. I went to a 3-day convening by a therapist at the time who was well known in America called John Bradshaw. And it was my first experience actually of a sharing circle. And I remember I was the last to speak in a circle of 7, and people were sharing how they'd been someone had been physically abused, someone who'd been sexually abused. And we were going around the circle, and I felt my problems were so minuscule that I almost felt embarrassed by them. And when I actually shared what my experience was of growing up, everyone was just present for me. And it was my first sort of, in a sense, one of my first spiritual experiences, because I felt held. I thought I would be judged that, is that your only problem? Is that all you went through? But the way they held me and heard me and were compassionate for me and almost acknowledging that my hurt was also important, actually transformed my way of seeing, because I think often we're a bit embarrassed by the problems we have, or we feel that we should have handled them better, or that it was our fault, or that we should have done it differently. And just that space of being heard, listened to, understood is transformational. And sometimes nothing has to be said. And we've shared this before in other episodes, but in the sharing circles in Plum Village, no one is given an answer. No one is told, oh, well, have you tried this? It is literally a deep listening circle where you can pour out your heart and you will be heard and listened to, and you won't be judged. You won't be asked questions about it. You won't have to justify it. And at the end of it, you are free. No one comes up to you unless they expressly ask you permission, saying, oh, can I talk to you about this? People are left to be present to their sharing and present to their pain. And I just find that being with others so powerful.
Yeah, and I think when we strip everything away, the noise, the screens, and you're just confronted with being, you have to start feeling. That is also where it becomes challenging. And I gave a talk for the teenagers this week in the Upper Hamlet. And the teen boys all have to submit their phones for the week to be part of the program. And then during the lazy days, they caught wind that the New Hamlet teenage program, all the girls get their phone on lazy days. So then they felt that was unfair, Because lazy day, that means we don't practice that day. And so you get the phone because the phone is not practicing. And so I got this report from the mothers that were in my Dharma sharing family. So they reported this to me. And I was very thankful because the next day I was giving the talk to them. And I shared with them, you not giving yourself an escape route, which is the phone. And intentionally, we ask all of you to give up your phone. It's because we want you to feel what it is to be irritated, to be annoyed, to be lonely, to confront some of the feelings that you can just run away in today's world. And the first day and two, it may be awkward for everybody, just getting to know everyone. And normally today, if you're awkward, go to your phone, run away. If you're feeling a particular way, you have an escape route. Go to the phone, run away. And so therefore, the program that we set up, especially for the teenagers and in the adults, just having very intentional instructions on using it. It is really also the challenge of today. It's like, how can we just be with our feelings and be with our pains that arises, and not to be judgmental about it, not to think it is a success or a failure if we have suffering, if we have pain, but just to really be there. The art of being is so crucial for the art of peace. The art of being is so important in order for the process and the world that we want to create, which is loving, compassionate. But if we don't practice that and we don't feel that, how can we even build this? And therefore, all of that just becomes empty language, empty words. And I think this is where we want to just tune back to just the actions of being and doing and bridging the two. And coming back to, the beginning, it is having a foundation that you can come back to in any moment of the day. And I have this story. It's become one of my all-time favorite. And it happened in the first week of the summer retreat. So I was having a conversation with a friend, and we're in my office. And my office is kind of like center of downtown Upper Hamlet. So I see like a lot of people crossing through. And then I see the gendarmerie, which are the police force in our region, walking past. Summer retreat, kids, teens, police.
Not a good mix.
Not a good mix. All of my fears came up. All of my anxieties came up. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the first week of the summer. Oh no, the police are here already. Okay, I bowed to my friend. I said, I have to go. This is my role. I have to go see what's going on. And as I was walking to the office, I was really grounding myself in my steps because I don't know what I'm gonna expect. And then I show up to the police officer, and there was a friend there help translating from French to English and English to French, and it was so the opposite of everything that I was thinking. And the police officer was like, we would like to ask permission to enter into your village because somebody in the bigger city has gone missing, and we are in their 7-kilometer radius that they need to inspect. And the way he asked, it was so kind, it was so respectful. And so I said, oh, of course, that is possible. And I asked permission, can I go with you though? Because they were there while like 4:30, so everybody is in Dhamma sharing. So if you see a force of 3 police officers walking through the village, everybody's fear will come up. And he said, of course, please come with us. Because in my view, it's like, if I come with them, at least they know, the abbot is with the police and, things are being cared for. And before we went to go into Upper Hamlet, the police officer said, and you know what? 20 years ago, I was a child in your program in the
Whoa,
summer
no
retreat in
way.
Upper Hamlet.
Whoa.
Jo, my jaw just dropped. And I just
amazing.
said, wow, how wonderful. And how unique is this that he was a child in our program. And now he is one of the head police officers doing this inspection. And they told me that, oh, we're not going to walk. We're going to go in the car. And they asked me, have you ever been in a French police car? And I said, no, with a lot of excitement. But there was one miscalculation that I had, which is I was going to be sitting in the back of the car.
Look as though you'd been arrested.
With the windows down. So everybody thought I was getting arrested. And we were entering in through the Upper Hamlet. And, the first group of people that saw me were the brothers at the vegetable garden. And so I heard this afterwards, but when they saw me in the police car, they all just start texting to all the brothers, like, I don't know what's going on, but our abbot is in the backseat of a police car. FYI, SOS, what is going on? And it just became, this ripple in the community, like Brother Phap Huu is being caught for something, and he's representing all of us. We don't know what's going on. But what the reality was in the police car, in the gendarmerie, they were so kind. They were so nice. And this police officer was going down like memory lane, and he was asking me, oh, I remember there was a bell tower, and us kids, we used to run around there. And so I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna pass it. And so as we were just going through Upper Hamlet, the outside, which is all of the retreatants and all the monks seeing me in the police car, were all freaking out. But in the police car, it was just so much curiosity, so much kindness, and even excitement. Because for some of the other two police officers, it's their first time seeing this. And they're like, so can the kids really meditate? There's so many kids here. Can they actually practice? And so on and so on. And at that moment, sitting with them, there was one realization that I was having was that they were also receiving all of this reaction from the outside, but they are so trained to ignore all of that. And in a way, I'm sure they're so good at it that it's just numb. And so intentionally, when I saw this, my presence with them and my being with them, I just wanted to offer them my gratitude, my love, and my care for them. Because here they are. It was on July the 14th, which is a national holiday in France. And it was the Euro Cup final day also.
Oh, big day.
So everybody was anticipating. And here they are. They have to go on a search for an elder man who has gone missing. And they're just doing what they need to do for the care and the safety of the community, the wider community. And on a daily basis, like how much hatred and energy and fear that they are being received, to the point that they're so good at ignoring these feelings. And so in that moment, I was just so aware that I am with them. And I just want to be human with them and be tender, be grateful for what they're doing. And this experience is so strong and so alive in me about views that we have and views that we create and what we hold on to, what is our reality of being.
Wow. Oh, fantastic story. I'd love to. Shame you weren't in handcuffs, brother.
And this is the one time I wish I had my phone, because that would
to
have been
record it.
a cool photo, and I didn't have my phone.
So, brother, I have one last question, and I want to come back to, when you were talking a bit earlier, you reminded me of a moment with my elder son where, when he was growing up, I gave him very limited time to technology, which at great cost to my personal well-being. But I remember once he said, "But Dad, you have to give it to me because otherwise I'll be bored." And I said, "But what a wonderful opportunity to know what boredom really feels like and to sit in boredom." Because actually, I said, there are many times in your life when you're going to experience boredom. And actually, what a good time to feel it now and know how to respond to it. So following from that, you talked about the teen program and the teens and sort of how they are. So some people always worry about whether transformation is possible. And they say, this is just the way I am. I'll try to change a bit, but actually I'm naturally this person or that person. And then when you actually ask them, are you naturally that or have you learned it? They normally say, well, actually, I've learned it. But with the teens, over the years, what is the experience of the teens? Because I would say that is probably one of the most courageous things Plum Village does, is have a teen program. It's one thing working with young kids of sort of 6 to 12, but then 12 to 16, 17. Most people would say, whoa, how do you work with teens in a way that helps them to come out of their doing and out of their distractions, and are they able to be? So it'd be lovely just to hear a little bit about your experience.
Oh, I wish we can bring in one of the brothers who take care of the teenage program to, really ask him questions. But what I observe and what I see and what I feel when I am with them, they go through all the emotions, all of the, what am I doing here? What is this for? All of these questions. And if you look at it from a point of view where, it may be just be they're rebelling, then you're going to suffer. But if you look at it as like, oh, they're curious, they're asking the right question. What am I doing here? What is this for?
Yeah.
It gives you a pathway. So every week we have a new group of teens, and every week is a different experience. And it really depends on the collective group of teens that are present. Sometimes weeks are so easy, and sometimes weeks are so difficult. So it is very courageous, and I'm always like grateful for the brothers and volunteers who are working with the teens. And the outcome of it is really always knowing that we have given the teenager an experience of being together, of sharing, of sitting in stillness. Every morning at 7:30, they get to sit on Thai's deck to look at the sunrise. And so many of them have reported to the parents, and the parents get so jealous, because we really invest a lot in the children and the teens, because we really see them as the future. We are also of the future, but we also know that the childhood experience really lays out a very strong foundation. And a lot of teenagers come also with yes, a lot of fear, and sometimes the fear of boredom is the biggest one. And there's one parent who I'm very close to, and it was so difficult um, bringing his son here. And on the first day of arrival, I met him, and I said, "How are you doing?" He's like, "Phap Huu, can you please pray for my son? I just hope he lasts this retreat." And I said, "I got it. Don't worry about it." Every time I saw him, the child, I gave him props. I always check in on how he's doing. And then on the last day, which was yesterday, I asked him, "So how was it?" He's like, "Phap Huu," he already said, Next year, I need a bigger tent. And that is a good sign. That is a sign that he was able to be. And of course, he went through all the emotions. Some days were like, he's like, I'm loving this. And some days like, oh, it's so boring. Silence again. Oh, this and that. But don't. Those are all traps. These are just emotions. Emotions and feelings that are rightfully a part of growth, and just don't be so fixated on the words that they are saying, but to see also the longer picture, and to trust it, to really trust that the seeds that are being sown here will bear fruits for their foundation in growth. And this is the good side. We also have sometimes, yesterday I had to take care of an incident where there was bullying happening in Plum Village. Two teenager, wasn't from the Upper Hamlet program, but another program, and there was some physical fighting. And then in that moment, it was like 10:30 p.m., Joe. And I was like, okay, it's like the 89th minute of the match, and we're about to end on a high note. And I get this call, and it's like, Brother Phap Huu, a kid is hurt, and there's some fighting. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I come, and when I came, I enter into first of all love and care. And the beauty of all this, was learning of what has happened, and then understanding that the teenager that hurt this other teen comes from a household with violence. And we learned this through the sharing of the other teenagers who know them. And the one thing that caught me off guard, Joe, was one of our volunteers who were helping de-escalate this moment was asking, how is the other teenager doing? So almost like, 6 monks were taking care of the teen that was injured. And then I was trying to understand the situation, making sure the parents understand what is happening and how we're going to take care of this. And the other teen has ran away because he knows that he has done something that is not right. And the volunteer said, I'm worried for him because I don't know which parents he have here. Because if the parent that is violent is here and hears this, it's going to be violent to him. And can I just share like how beautiful that mindset is? It's just to care for, we're caring for all sides here. We're not taking one side, but we're seeing every aspect, and to even come to the space of understanding, compassion, and love for the outcome of the bully. In that moment, I was so moved. And I also talked to the brothers in Shanghai who's with the program down there, and also just asking which parent is here, because really caring for his safety too. And say, oh no, it's just his mother here. The father is the one that is more aggressive. And so a part of me, I know, okay, at least while he's in Plum Village, I can be certain that energy won't be imposed. And then I talked to the elder brothers, and this morning, talking to the parents, explaining to the parents, and bridging and understanding the situation and how to practice, and also naming what he did was very wrong, and we don't tolerate bullying in Plum Village. Like, I was very clear about this. Like, this is something that we cannot tolerate, and this is the first time, if it ever happens again, blacklisted into Plum Village. We just have to have very clear boundaries. Our compassion is also limited, and there are particular situations where we have to be very strong in order to care for the safety of everyone. But also knowing that it takes two to create a mess. So really also coming down to, you know, the younger teenager and explaining how the communication and the teasing and what he said triggered the other teenager. I won't go into details, but understanding all causes and conditions coming to this moment.
And thank you, brother. And that's a wonderful example of what we've been talking about the whole way, which is that actually by being and understanding how to be, then you can act with integrity and with understanding. And actually, because normally you'll just go and want to punish, the quotes unquote bully. But actually, if you are present and you're able to see everything, then you're able to act with integrity, but with firmness. It doesn't mean you act with softness. It means you act with real clarity.
Yeah, and with when the volunteers shared that, my energy towards the bully also shifted. Like I at first, to be honest, I was very angry, and I was just like, how can you behave like this in Plum Village? And how can you actually physically do that in Plum Village to another friend or
Yeah.
young child or young teenager, not child, teenager here. But how I shifted, has an impact and has the way that then I talk to the monastics, how we're going to handle this situation. And yeah, the teenager that was quote unquote the bully in this situation. I don't want to call him the bully, but he is also a human being. But he was very scared this morning and hiding in his room and so on. And so we were communicating to the brothers just to, just to teach him that to learn from this moment and to also understand that the kind of fear and anxiety that he brought to all of us as a community. That's a big lesson for him. And poor brothers, we had to take one of them to the hospital there to 1 a.m. So really, like, summer retreat,
Everything can happen.
full on.
Well, as I always say, never a dull moment in Plum Village.
Yeah.
Brother, thank you for your sharing. I'm wondering whether you would be able to offer us a meditation on being, on how we can be present to life.
Dear friends, just to come back to the theme of today is the practice of being. Let us take a moment to allow ourselves to pause and to come to a state of resting or stillness. So whether we are jogging, running, walking, or we are sitting on our couch, on a train, on an airplane, in a car, wherever you may be finding yourself, just finding a stable posture that we can be in, whether we're standing, sitting, or even laying down, and just start to feel the body that is present. Being aware of our head, our face, our neck, our shoulders. Release any of the tensions that are there, our arms, our hands, our chest, our belly, our back, our buttocks, our thighs, our legs, our feet. Just being present for our whole body. Our body is here. We are here. And now let us bring our attention to our in-breath and bring our attention to our out-breath. Breathing in, I know this is an in-breath. Breathing out, I know this is an out-breath. Breathing in, I know I have a body. Breathing out, I am alive. I am here. In, body, out, alive. Breathing in, I invite the energy of stillness to be present. Breathing out, I stay with the energy of stillness. If my mind is running in the 10 directions, just guide it home to the breath, allowing our breath to guide ourselves to the space of stillness. Breathing in, being with silence. Breathing out, I enjoy the silence. Breathing in, being the peace. Breathing out, peace becomes my ground of being. Peace, being. Breathing in, knowing the action of being still is the action of doing. Breathing out, this is the foundation of my action. My quality of being becomes my quality of doing. Breathing in, enjoying the in-breath. Breathing out, enjoying the out-breath. So simple, so delicious. The extraordinary of actions in just a breath. This is life. This is being. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I'm grateful for everyone that is breathing together with me mindfully. Thank you, dear friends, for practicing with us.
And thank you, dear brother. So, dear listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please know that there are many more episodes of this podcast series, and you can find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other platform that carries podcasts. And if you enjoyed it, we would love it if you would care to leave a review so that other people can follow your trail to us and hopefully benefit from some of Brother Phap Huu's wisdom.
You can also find all previous guided meditation in the on-the-go section of the Plum Village app. The podcast is co-produced with Global Optimism and the Plum Village app with support from the Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation. If you feel inspired to support the podcast moving forward, please go to www.tnhf.org/donate. And we want to thank all our friends and collaborators, Kata, Clay, aka the Podfather, our co-producer, our other Joe, our audio editing, Anka, our show notes and publishing, Jasmine and Cindy, our social media guardian angel, and today, Georgine, our new sound engineer and technician for our recording. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time.
The way out is in.
Hello, world. We're the hosts of Outrage and Optimism, a podcast about nature, climate, politics, and everything in between. Here to announce a brand new mini-series we've made just for you.
Yes, we've been working in climate for a long time. And while it's fun for some of us to go on and on about representative concentration pathways, the albedo effect, anthropogenic forcing...
Tom, stop. Nobody has a clue what you're talking about.
Exactly. So you get my point. Our podcast is aiming to talk about climate change in a way that connects with people, speaking like friends would.
Because we are friends.
Yes, and as friends, the three of us sat down to discuss the top questions people are wrestling with right now. Should I fly? Should I have children? What should I eat? Suffice to say, we did not agree on everything.
No, but that's not really the point, right? The conversation moved into such a space of honesty that it helped us find new pathways we do agree on. This series is for everyone wanting to do something about climate change and wanting to live a good life at the same time.
So pull up a chair to the table with us. The new series starts on 3rd of October on Outrage and Optimism.